Welcome to this episode of Project Success Stories. Today I'm joined by Stephenie Gloden. Well, Stephenie, I'm really excited that you're here on the show.
Thanks, Earl. I'm excited to be here too.
You know, we just had Dustin on the prior episode.
I know. I bet he had a good story to tell.
He sure did. But can't wait to hear your story. Actually, let's get into that. So I understand there's something around the content creation. Set the stage for us about your story.
Okay, so with our institution, you know, we deliver online education. So oftentimes our students have issues going to school online, so they're going to call in with their issues or their questions. And we were facing a problem making sure that our content was up to date and relevant, because their issues or their questions could be very diverse for our technical assistance agents. So we needed to come up with a better method to create knowledge so that our technical assistance agents could be effective solving our students' issues.
Well, knowledge management is such a robust area, and there's so many different ways to do it. How did you decide to approach it?
So fortunately, I was introduced to a methodology called knowledge-centered support that was established by the Consortium for Service Innovation back in the 90s to address this very issue. And this methodology takes advantage of a just-in-time framework that leverages our frontline employees and to create content once they realize that content doesn't exist and frame it in the context of the customer's voice. So it's a pretty effective methodology, but it also asks that we trust our frontline to be the creators of that content, which generally causes a lot of consternation when you first introduce that idea.
Well, let's go deeper into that area, because anything that involves frontline employees and getting them engaged, those are really interesting areas.
Right. So you hit the nail on the head right there. So it's a very empowering methodology, but it also makes our leadership initially nervous about it. It's a complete culture shift for them because we're going to trust those frontline employees to write down what they're actually saying to our students, but it's highly effective because they're going to write that content the way that the students are asking questions and also asking or telling what their issues are. So it's the most effective method that we can see. Plus, they're going to create content immediately, so there's no latency in getting content in the knowledge base so that everybody can share it. So it's a real sort of social economy kind of methodology that really takes advantage of the way that we like to operate as people today.
I think that's really important, and it's obvious you feel so strongly about this. What were some of the things that you did to lay the groundwork to convince everyone that that's the right way to go?
So we had a lot of interactions with our leadership. We brought in a third party to train on the methodology just to make our leadership feel comfortable. But the biggest thing is that once we started unleashing our front line, because our front line was leveraged, not only are they the owners of the methodology, but they also participated in the project from the beginning. Once we saw what talent we had and our leadership saw what talent we had on the floor that you typically don't get to see, it really sort of grew from there. Satisfaction and employee engagement rose significantly because they really felt like a sense of pride and ownership in what they were able to do and how they were able to change the way that they supported our students. And because there was a licensing model and an assessment practice along with the framework, then it lent a lot of credibility and ease to our leadership that this was actually pretty structured methodology. So those are some of the things that we did, and just the inertia of the employee satisfaction and the way that our students could now be serviced a lot better really lent itself well to the credibility of the program. That's
great. Now, I'd love to hear about a sparkle that maybe one of the frontline folks had, and maybe a chance for you to interact with them. So I do have a sparkle. It's maybe less frontline driven, but more leadership driven, which I think is just as effective with this subject matter. So when we were first launching the methodology or the framework into our Technical Assistance Center, our director at the time really was challenged, was really struggling to support us in this. And as anyone who's implemented any sort of process change or project, if you do not have the top leadership buy-in, it's going to be a challenge all the way down. You have to have leadership buy-in.
And so we decided that we were going to pull him aside. We brought in his favorite food, which was sushi. We all, sort of crowded around him. Exactly. Who doesn't love sushi? We crowded around him, and we really started showing him what his frontline was doing from a statistics perspective, but as well as just the anecdotal side of it and how excited they were to be participating in this. And we showed him what the future could look like. So that director now is the director of our knowledge management team. So he became such a convert in it and such a believer that this was a fundamental change. So not only just to create knowledge, but just a shift in general about how we can engage with our employees and drive higher satisfaction and engagement, that he's now our largest champion. So that's a big sparkle, I think.
Seriously, we should change the name of the show to Sparkle Stories instead of Success Stories.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, many in our audience are wondering the same thing. I'm facing the same challenges. I have maybe a hierarchical organization. I want to change the culture. What's your advice to them?
So I have good advice here. So first of all, we like to think that we took sort of a two-pronged approach here. So first was to appeal to the front line. So the frontline supervisors, the frontline staff, get them excited about the possibilities. Because when you build that sort of grassroots momentum, it makes it more difficult not to see this thing grow and be accepted and adopted. So that's a big key. At the same time, we would work on the upper leadership. This particular program, as I'm sure many others, has such a significant impact financially as well as some of the things we talked about from a satisfaction perspective that you want your senior leadership to know it and support it and understand it. So while we were building the grassroots inertia down at the frontline level, we were really actively working on leadership at the same time. So it wasn't one or the other to drive the program. So that was really effective.
That's great, Stephenie. Now, I know you're a leader not just at your organization, but also in the community. You're very involved with St. Mary's Food Bank. Tell us a little bit about that.
So St. Mary's Food Bank is really special to me. I reached out to them because it's a cause that I find really important. And I reached out to see what I might be able to do and contribute to them. And come to find out, like many nonprofit organizations, St. Mary's Food Bank really had a need for some technical assistance. So I'm the person for the job and my team as well. So we've engaged with St. Mary's Food Bank to rebuild their internal intranet so that they can have better communication across their organization. And we feel really excited about that opportunity to help St. Mary's and their mission to shorten the line.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for your leadership there. Also, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Raul.